My son's text flashed in the dark. "You won't be joining us. My wife prefers to keep it only family." I sat still the years I spent raising him, pressing like weights on my chest, but I didn't crumble. I quietly saved every message, every receipt, and began building a paper trail as solid as the house they thought they owned. They believed they'd erased me, but they had only lit the first match of a fire they couldn't control. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Silence is not surrender. It is a spine. Houston nights teach that the AC ticks, windows breathe, and a dark phone becomes a small lighthouse. I am 67, a mother before anything keeping my own counsel. In the hush, I sort what hurts, what helps, what can wait. Quiet is not a cage. It is a choice. Boundary is love with a spine. Tonight proof. The message arrived as a clean blue bubble, ordinary as a grocery reminder, and just as cold. "You won't be joining us on the cruise. Carol prefers to keep it only family, only family." I read it twice, then again as the room tilted. I typed one word, okay, command. The period stood like a door I closed. The clock read 11:07 p.m. I saved the thread view with the time showing. A flicker of young Lyle at the pool tried to surface, but I did not look back tonight. I looked at the sentence that pretended I had not carried him, fed him, steadied him, paid the deposits, signed the checks. Only family words that tidy a table by sweeping crumbs to the floor. I noted the blue check marks and left it there. I kept my breathing slow and counted to 4 before I moved. Firm. I set the phone face down and let the table steady me. In through the nose, 4 counts. Hold 4, out 6. No dialing, no explaining. I rinsed a glass, drank tap water, cold from the pipe, felt the chill ride down and settle me. A notebook waited by the microwave. I wrote the time and the exact words. Then I turned off the kitchen light and went to bed on purpose. The ceiling fan clicked. I listened until the rhythm matched my breath and only then let my eyelids close. On time morning arrived in a wedge of pale heat across the sink, coffee black. I opened email. There it was. Family cruise final itinerary. My name appeared on the latest message, only CC'd after the fact with a banner I know too well. "You don't have permission to view previous messages in this thread." The organizer line read, "Carol." The participants list showed cousins, in-laws, and Lyle High near the top. I was last. Subject lines told the story. Cabin assignments, dietary restrictions, airport rides all settled without me. I took screenshots, full header participants, the gray warning the timestamp. I saved each image to a new folder on my desktop labeled 1 Cruise Thread. Another email sat below with attachments packing, ski list check-in, steps, emergency contact. A link to chat history gave the same lock. I noted the dates and Port Galveston 2 Saturdays out. Noted again. The text and the thread spoke the same dialect, helpful, tidy erasing. Only family from a son who still brings me his tax questions. A thread about rides and room keys that pretends I am a ghost. I don't argue with tone. I watch language. The verbs were closed, assigned, finalized, confirmed, like doors eased shut with 2 fingers. The nouns I was given were the ones that do not require a chair CC FYI later. I underlined how motherhood became logistics, not belonging. Today was enough. I would not plead for space at a table I paid for, but I would measure the table and keep the receipt okay. I opened a fresh folder on my desktop named To Evidence. Inside it, I created subfolders, texts, emails, events. Screenshots slid into place, each file renamed with date and time in the same pattern, 2025-09-17-2-307. Okay, text 2025-9-18-079 see thread. I took a photo of the phone screen with the kitchen clock in frame. Redundancy helps when people insist a thing never happened. I copied Kirill's organizer address into a small note app and added her office number from her signature block. Under that, I wrote a private line to myself. No calls today. Verify first. Then I set a reminder for later to review bank notifications and subscription emails. I do not chase storms. I chart them. I saved the header as PDF and copied it to a thumb drive in the sugar jar. Small things live where hands know. Lyle is 36, good with customers, softer with conflict. He sells cars in Pearland and texts me photos of trade-ins he thinks I'll like. Kirill is 34, an event manager who speaks fluent calendar links, forms, confirmations. These are not judgments, they are descriptions. Power often hides inside ordinary nouns. I have been the one who steadies dogs at vet visits, signs for packages, and keeps spare house keys. When people are used to you being useful, they forget you are someone. Outside live oaks threw lacy shade across ranch-style roofs. The AC kicked, paused, kicked again. Trash trucks sighed down the street Friday on their minds. The email timestamp fixed the morning at 7:12. Galveston was a straight shot down I-45, but I stayed put, coffee warm in my hand, the day already speaking. I opened the blinds an inch and watched a jogger pass red cap, steady gait herd. I wrote a promise on a sticky note and pressed it to the fridge. I will not argue. I will verify. I will not plead. I will document. If I am excluded, let it be recorded by their own systems. Quiet, I reminded myself, is a strategy, not a silence they own. When they do, someone always asks what happened. I plan to have the answer in a neat folder. Evidence closes doors that apology never will true. I pulled a dining chair back and reached for the old file drawer. I would attend their pre-cruise dinner, eyes open, voice quiet, watch what they choose to pretend, then choose my next move. So I pressed address, charged my phone, and walked into their pre-cruise banquet as if I'd been invited. I kept my voice tucked away and let my eyes do the work. Rule for me, listen, log, leave. Calm. Sugarland's live oaks threw late light over a curb crowded with SUVs. The driveway was full, sidewalk swept, citronella candles already going. Inside, warm bulbs and staged coziness buffet trays in rented chafers, a neat line of Tong's bar cart with citrus wheels. On the sideboard, a stack of glossy programs printed with anchors and tiny palm trees. Place cards stood at each table, cream stock serif font, small gold dots. Carol's habits were everywhere, matching linens, chalkboard signs, a timeline taped discreetly to the pantry door. Intent. A hostess smile steered me toward a two-top by the swinging kitchen door, half in the traffic lane. Servers brushed my chair with trays and apologies that were more motion than sound. A place card waited Nori, no last name, no flourish. From here I could see the trash pull out the shelf of spare napkins, the clipboard with task lists. I did not ask to move. Observation works best where people forget you're present. The porthole blinked faces, the DJ with cables, a cousin with desserts. Kirill signaled. I kept my handbag down and my posture easy. When the lights dimmed, the TV sprang to life. Title card, How We Built Our Home. Paint swatches fanned like peacock tails. Clips of keys in palms. A slow pan across new floors. They narrated over music-saving, hustling late nights, an industrious hymn. There was no frame of my transfer, no mention of the wire I sent, the tax letters, the deed work. A final montage showed a boo on a mailbox. I watched the HDMI input in the corner, the file name blinking, Foster Home Story, Final 3.mp4. Below the screen, a small silver stick glowed with a label maker's strip, Foster Home Story. Their credits rolled like a boutique film. Music licensed photos, courtesy of friends, sponsors, thanked for generous guidance. The story was tidy and complete without a mother in it. I memorized wording and watched which hands clapped. First, Carol lifted a flute and thanked everyone who believed in us as we saved for our house. Lyle nodded, eyes skating past me like a skipped stone. Glasses rose and tapped. I sipped water. I stored the phrasing exactly as delivered, as if dictating into a quiet recorder in my head. Belief was the word she chose, a soft blanket over hard numbers. No names, no figures, just glow that erased edges. I let the heat pass and kept my hands still. Near the kitchen, two guests paused with tiny forks and whispered under music. Is she with catering one? masked eyes flicking toward my plain chair. "Probably staff," the other replied, sliding past as the door tapped my shoulder again. I kept my gaze on the slideshow's looping credits and tasted the metal of restraint. A server mouthed sorry and moved on. I wrote nothing on my face. The words didn't wound like a shout. They filed me into a category that asked nothing and took everything. It was an old trick, make a woman invisible by assuming she belongs to the cleanup. I let the assumption stand long enough to be obvio. I lifted my phone screen, dimmed, and took clean shots of the thank you sponsors slide, the silver HDMI stick, with its label and the printed menu, where Carol's LLC sat in tiny type. Timestamps were on. I photographed the program cover and the timeline taped inside the pantry door. Details talk later when people won't. I also snapped the place card that dropped my last name and the seating map with a neat gap where a head table might have honored elders. I saved each file into a folder, name by date, and left it op. Lyle found a moment to lean in, voice low and salesman smooth. "Hope you're comfortable, Mom." I kept my tone level. "I am." Between us, the door sighed on its hinges. He glanced toward the screen, then at the guests calculating lanes. "It's a big night," he said. "It is," I answered. Subtext was easier than speeches. "I am here. I am record." Kirill moved with the certainty of someone running a show, cueing the playlist, nodding at servers, handing a mic to the friend who tells a tidy story. She never met my eyes, not once, which is its own sentence. Power here was control of the timeline, what plays, who speaks, when the lights soften. I watched her swap a slide midstream with a phone tap like a conductor. She thrives where details obey. The room followed her finger like iron to a magnet, and even Lyle kept pace. I stored that too, who deferred, who nudged, who needed applause. In the guest bath, I washed my hands longer than habit and looked at myself only long enough to count breaths. 4 and 4 held 6 out. I straightened the towel for the next stranger and let the thud of bass from the living room pass through the door like distant weather. I left no note, only a dry sin. My phone read 7:42 on a weekday. A magnet board near the garage door held a cruise itinerary and a packing list typed in bullet points. Galveston sat an hour away if traffic behaved. I chose to finish my plate, rinse the glass myself at the sink, and leave without goodbyes. A record is cleanest, that I texted myself, screenshots saved, verify cruise status, check bank alerts at dawn. Then I stepped into the evening and closed the door like a fill. At 7:06 a.m., I hit play on the voicemail, then tapped into my accounts and saw the first thing that didn't belong. "Good morning, Noreen," the agent said. First name, cheerful script, steady. Calling to confirm a change. Your boarding pass was canceled per the group organizer on file. The group code is Mariner D7. If you have questions, call me back. The tone clicked. I replayed it, saved the audio, and wrote the time in my notebook, 7:07. I added the callback number and the code, then set the file to lock, so no well-meaning nephew could clean storage later. Discipline steadies the hands. I created a dated folder on my desktop, Cruise Group 22511. Inside it, I dropped the voicemail file and a brief log who said what, when, and the group code. I wrote one line to anchor the memory, canceled per organizer. Not system error, not weather. Language matters when stories shift shape. Then I opened the banking app. The blue wheel spun. My breath did not. In checking, a comb of small transfers lined the page, neat as stitches. Home Maint repairs supplies. The amounts were sized to slip under notice: 6218, 8470, 9703 weekly, then twice weekly. Memo fields were vague or blank. I exported the last 90 days as a PDF and marked 2 repeating descriptors I didn't recognize. The anomaly deepened in the card list. There it was, a linked secondary user card with last 4 I'd never seen. I tapped for details. A nickname sat beside it, 2 letters that aligned too neatly with Kirill's initials. I took a clean screenshot with the last 4 visible and saved it with date and time. Another screen showed device history. A login from last week read kitchen iPad, a name I didn't own. I saved that too and breathed through the rising heat behind my ribs. I put the phone down and did not call. Not Lyle, not Carol, not anyone who would ask me to keep the peace. Instead, I listed next actions in a calm hand download statements. Verify payees, turn on alerts, schedule two-factor cleanup with Whitaker, request a new debit card, place a temporary cap on outbound transfers. Procedure is armor when love is used as leverage. Back to the machine. I downloaded the last 6 months of statements and renamed each 2025-006 Gulf Bank Checking.pdf up to 2025-11. In the margin of my notebook, I starred transactions that match the home maint pattern and underlined every payment grouped near a weekend. I opened a fresh document and pasted a table for dates, amounts, memo, and correlating slide titles from last night. I'd fill the fourth column next. I let the kitchen go quiet for one long minute. Morning light touched the table, catching a water ring where a sippy cup used to sit when Lyle was small. No lament, just inventory. The fan over the stove clicked at its slowest setting. Somewhere outside, trash trucks groaned. I set the timer for 3 minutes and let the breath settle to even. Then I cross-checked the dates against the banquet materials. The slideshow timeline thanked DIY weekend August 10th, 11, yet transfers labeled repairs hit the account August 6th and 7. Another slide, paint party. September 3rd trailed payments on September 1st that went to a contractor service I know is not a party. Either their memory bends or their narrative does. I copied the images from my phone and pasted thumbnails next to the rows. A light hypothesis formed, nothing dramatic, just a small iron bar I could hold. I am funding a story where I do not exist. The boundary wrote itself beneath it. No confrontation, only verification, escalation through institutions. That line pulled my shoulders level. I drafted 2 emails. The first to my advisor subject, voice confirmation lock. I asked for approval by telephone for any transfer above $200 and a temporary freeze on adding users. I attached 2 screenshots and kept the tone dry. The second to an estate attorney whose card I still had from 3 years ago. Authorization review and POA audit. I asked for a check on every signature naming an agent other than me. No accusation, only facts and times. Sun climbed the blinds. West Belfort began to hum. I set 2 reminders for mid-morning callbacks and stuck a note on the inside of my front door. Do not sign anything left at the door. Small rules save big futures. Before the coffee cooled, I opened alerts and security. I turned on push notices for withdrawals over $50 added email copies to a secondary account I control and disabled paperless for 2 cycles, so mailed statements would create an external record. In payees, I printed the list to PDF and circled 2 vendors that appeared only after the house transfer. I highlighted weeknight timestamps that didn't fit my habits and saved the screenshots in order. Quiet work, no drama. Paper before talk. Next, I called the bank's main line and used the automated menu to hear my options without executing any change. Press 3 to add an authorized user. I didn't. Press 4 to dispute a transaction. Not yet. I hung up and typed a checklist lock card. PIN in-branch ID check alert thresholds confirmed. I drank the coffee cold. I transcribed the voicemail into my log and backed the folder to a thumb drive labeled with today's date, then placed it in the small firebox under the sink. Then I locked the gate. By noon, a sealed envelope would slide under my door with just sign, "Whenever you're ready, Mom and I would not." I photographed the envelope where it landed and opened my laptop, not the flap. I set the envelope under my desk lamp in plain sight and wrote a line on a yellow note, "Do not sign. Verify first. Rules keep panic from dressing up as urgency." I straightened. The note turned the lamp a fraction brighter and logged in with the same measured breath I used before backing down the driveway. The bank's security page loaded. A banner I had never noticed before sat near the top, new trusted device added. The timestamp was last Tuesday at 8:19 p.m., the night I was home watching a documentary. The device name read like a phone that wasn't mine, capital letters, and a hyphenated model I've never owned. I clicked more details, captured the full screen with the date and the support ticket number. The site assigned automatically, then saved it to today's folder before my heart could write a story of its own. I did not send any codes. Instead, I opened the two-step verification history page and read it like a ledger. Prior successful verifications listed in a neat column, 2 of them attributed to the unfamiliar device. I took screenshots in order list view, detail view help text that defined trusted. Each save got a standardized file name with minute and second stamps. If someone asked later what happened when my answer would be here, not I think. Documentation is a kind of prayer for people who believe in paper more than persuasion. I built subfolders, bank security, trust device, timeline. After each capture, I added a single-line log entry action, screen reason. It kept the mind in its lane and the hands off the phone. Quiet is easier when you are busy labeling it. Then I opened my slideshow notes from last night and the spreadsheet I made this morning. On the left, their story, how we built our home. The HDMI stick named Foster Home Story Slide, titles with dates, DIY Weekend Paint Party Contractor Day each, with an order number I'd photographed in the corner of the TV. On the right, my ledger, the withdrawals labeled Home Maint Repairs Supplies with their amounts and times. I put them side by side, a split screen of claim versus cash. The columns refused to agree. DIY Weekend, August 10th and 11th, sat beside 2 withdrawals on August 6th and 7th to a hardware chain across town. Paint Party, September 3rd, aligned with a payment 2 days earlier to a vendor that doesn't sell balloons, only labor by the hour. Contractor Day. October 12th matched a series of smaller transfers to the same account number Kirill had used for an event in May. The pattern was tidy if you wanted to be the hero of your own movie. Do the work on Sunday, talk about saving, spend the money before the toast. I flagged 12 entries with a red star and typed, "For attorney in the margin." From the photo I'd taken, I transcribed the tiny label etched on the HDMI stick and the order numbers that flickered in the bottom. Right, ZO1. Welcome, ZO2 keys. ZO3 paint. Year we did it. I guessed at creation. Windows based on file metadata. The TV briefly flashed during a pause. Late nights, weekday uploads, all within a week of charges that originated from my account. The stick wasn't a scrapbook. It was a script. Motive is a slippery word. I am not a detective. I am a mother who knows the weight of a savings book. But when transfers align with a performance of thrift, you can feel the air change. The narrative seems engineered to keep applause trained forward while the money moves sideways. I adjusted my glasses, highlighted a dozen lines, and added each to a short list labeled Exhibits House Story versus Ledger. I stood at the window for 1 minute and watched the live oaks make their slow hand gestures in the breeze. No memory trip, no baby pictures, no gentle museum tour through the years. I drank a glass of water, set it down, and sat back at the desk. The envelope waited, still sealed, still lit. I let it wait. I had work. Tomorrow needed a list. I drafted it with plain verbs and neutral nouns, request voice confirmation lock with Whitaker, schedule in-branch ID check, print 6 months of statements, prepare a simple timeline exhibit with 3 columns date their claim my ledger, request written confirmation of all authorized users, ask attorney for a POA and authorization audit, bring 2 screenshots, only not the whole flood, no adjectives, no speeches, institutions first, conversations last. Thunder grumbled somewhere south toward the bay. The AC clicked into a higher hum and flattened a curl of the sticky note. My phone showed 12:28. I set alarms for 2 different callbacks and slid the file box closer to the desk's edge. The envelope stayed under the lamp like a paper moon you do not wish upon. I reopened the security page to check my own steps. No new trusted devices. Good. I added 2 backup codes to a handwritten card and placed it in the small firebox with the labeled drive. I changed one password that had the sin of being convenient. I took a photo of the envelope, the lamp, the note, and the clock in case anyone asked when I saw what and where it sat. I saved the photo and wrote the ordinary truth beneath it. I did not open it. I drafted an email to myself titled Day's Work Listing, captures times, and the short reasons I'd chosen each. If I had to speak later with someone in a suit, my tongue could start where the page ended. I pinned the email and closed the laptop long enough to feel how quiet the house was when no one is rehearsing their innocence at you. The phone buzzed once against the wood. A calendar reminder blinked, call bank by 2. I nodded to no one open the laptop again and checked the checklist against the folders. Every item got a green dot except the calls. They would come with office hours. Then I wrote the same sentence I've written on other hard days, the one that leaves no space. For pleading, I will proceed by paper, not permission. By afternoon, another note would ride on that envelope. Just sign whenever you're ready. Mom and my first call would not be to them. I dialed my advisor on speaker and asked for one simple thing. No money moves without my voice. The envelope waited where the light fell, a white legal sleeve with neat blue ink. Just sign whenever you're ready, Mom. I photographed it and placed the shadow edge and the door seam, then noted the time and the weather on a sticky 3:02 p.m. thunder, far off air, heavy. I did not open it. I wrote my rule again and set it on top, do not sign. Verify first. Then I moved the packet to the table's far edge, visible, not reachable. I brewed tea. The steam steadied my hands more than sugar ever could. The phone lay face up. When Heath answered, I pressed speaker and said, Heath, I want a voice confirmation lock on every transfer and any change to beneficiaries. He didn't sound surprised. He asked a few security questions, read the last 4 of my account, and said the feature existed. No movement without your live voice recorded, he repeated, careful and slow, like putting a bar across a door. Install it, I said. Heath walked me through. He opened a case, read the ticket number twice, and set the callback phrase that would verify me if a branch called Ms. Foster, say Bluebonnet after the tone. I repeated it. He confirmed the setting had propagated across checking savings and retirement. I asked him to summarize the terms in an email while we remained on the line. When it hit my inbox, I saved a PDF of the preference screen and the call summary tagged to my profile. I logged the time and wrote one line, Voy. Only then did I slide a letter opener across the envelope's top seam. I did not bend the pages. I fanned them across the table under the lamp. The headings wore polite clothing. Convenience, streamlining, emergency readiness, while the clauses underneath were dressed for power durable. Power of attorney, irrevocable authority to manage accounts and property, consent to make medical decisions. The signature line had a small adhesive flag already placed. Someone expected me to move like water. I refused. I numbered sections with tiny stickies, 1 medical, 2 asset transfers, 3 property management, 4 digital access, 5 beneficiary changes. Where a clause cross-referenced another, I wrote the section number in the margin and circled it. I photographed each page, flat page number visible, then slipped the stack back into the envelope without returning the flag to the signature line. I did not call Lyle. I did not call Carol. I scheduled institutions. First, I booked a morning slot with an estate attorney downtown for a power of attorney review and revocation path. Then I set a follow-up with Heath to confirm the voice lock was logged across all systems. I kept my tone in every message short and professional. Facts carry farther when they don't ask to be liked. I warmed the tea again and chose the dining chair closest to the window's light. I set my feet flat, placed both palms on the table, rested for a minute, and then stood to file documents. My body is 67. It appreciates procedure. When I moved quietly. Print, hole punch, sleeve label. Outside, the sun pushed through a gauze of cloud. The AC hummed another cycle. A truck rumbled down the block and faded. My phone read 3:17 p.m. I glanced at tomorrow's calendar. 2 squares had turned blue, 9:10 with Avery attorney, 10:45 with Heath confirmation call. I added one more reminder. Bring only 2 screenshots, not the flood. I placed the envelope into a clear sleeve stamped unsigned in a crisp labeler font, then slid it into the front of a thin red binder, labeled authority. I drafted a short email to Avery while the tea went warm. Documents left under door while they're away suspected durable POA language with irrevocable wording, seeking full review and a clean revocation strategy. I will bring copies and a preliminary timeline. Please advise if additional prep is needed. I attached 2 images the envelope as it arrived. When I hit send, I let the room be a room again. The lamp threw a patient circle on the table. The binder lay where I could see it. I cleaned the teacup, dried it, and set it upside down on the rack. Ordinary order returns a spine to a day that tried to fold you. The phone buzzed once Heath's summary arrived with the case ID and the phrase we set. I saved it twice, once to the computer and once to the external drive, and printed a single copy. In my log, I wrote bank voice lock active, email saved, PDF stored, print filed. I closed the log and the laptop and stood long enough to feel my legs. I thought about the handwriting on that envelope, the careful M in Mom, as if affection could be a cover letter. I chose not to read tone into ink. I chose paper instead. I wrote one more sticky for the inside cover of the binder, Institution's First Not Family. Before dusk, I laid out tomorrow's clothes, navy slacks, soft-soled flats, the leather folder my husband once used. I tucked in 2 pens and a ruled notepad. On the fridge, I added a note, "Do not sign at the door." I checked the peephole set. The chain breathed. Quiet is not retreat, it is staging. Alarm 6:30 binder by the door, the house settling around the decision I had made. Okay, I set my wallet by the keys and checked the printer, 1 page to file now. By the time I reached Avery's office, a new file code would wait for me, and a lender's pre-approval would already have my address on it. Avery pressed record and had me revoke every scrap of permission I'd ever signed. The garage swallowed my car. Elevator up, glass room, lemon cleaner, a recorder with a red eye. I set the clear sleeve marked unsigned on the table. Avery clicked a pen. Let's give this day a backbone. He stated my name, matter number, date, and time. I read our statement. I rescind all prior powers of attorney-authorized user access and any delegated permissions. No one acts for me without my live voice and signature, effective immediately. Avery slid 2 drafts, revocation of previous authorizations, cease and desist to serve with tracking. We built the mailing list like a Firebreak Bank's brokerage insurer title, even the HOA. For each, Avery added service method and contact. Shame is smoke. Theft leaves paper. We chose paper. He lifted the envelope pages with gloved fingertips. Headings promised convenience. The middle lines bit. Agent May, self-deal, he read. Another clause, irrevocable upon signature. Red tabs bloomed. This is not help, he said. It is a takeover. We triggered verification while the recorder ran. Avery emailed Heath to lock my accounts to my voice passphrase, opened a title lender matter code, and booked a notary. We'll walk these across the street, he said, so no one claims they didn't know. My phone buzzed. Unknown local. Avery gestured to speaker. Ms. Foster Gannon, your attorney asked me to follow a thread. There's an active pre-approval listing your previously gifted house as collateral. The room went quiet. Application opened 10 days ago, he said. Borrowers Lyle Foster and Kirill. Lender notes strong family backing. No disclosure of your funding. I watched the red light. Repeat the date and the property address. I said. He did. Avery boxed both on a yellow pad. Projected closing assumes clear title, Gannon added. If you've reversed or are reversing in process, I said, letting the words take a chair. We pinned my transfer log beside photos of last night's slideshow notes. DIY weekends sat after 3 withdrawals from my account. They built a story over your money, Avery said. We'll build a record over theirs. Risks next. If that pre-approval matures, a lien can arrive before a phone call, he said. Speed is safety. No confrontation, I answered. Only notices and holds. Exactly, he said. You don't need their understanding. You need their access cut. Action list locked. Serve revocations today. Send notice to lender identifying me as prior owner and current party with contested interests. Demand a hold pending title verification. Request the notary journal from any signing they arranged. Confirm the bank's voice lock. Add a branch alert requiring in-person ID. File my affidavit repeating the revocation and the facts of the envelope. I signed the affidavit slowly. The notary checked my license and pressed a heavy seal. Outside lunch hour horns layered along Travis Street. The credenza clock read 12:41 p.m. Avery stamped the packet, received. We walked the documents to title. A clerk scanned and returned a stamped copy. Back upstairs, Avery sent the notice to lender. An auto reply pinged received. A read receipt followed 3 minutes later. Good, he said. Now the notary's book. Gannon called again. One more item, he said. The lender file holds a gift letter template with blanks. Someone plans to dress your silence as consent. My hands stayed flat. Log the file name, I said. Don't touch the file. Understood. I looked at Avery. I'm not calling them, I said. Not today. He nodded. We let institutions talk. If family asks later, you show timestamps. Something inside me stacked into beams and joists. Quiet can be architecture. Avery slid a clean copy of my affidavit to take home. Tonight you sleep behind words that hold. I placed it in my folder, closed the flap, and stood. My knees complained, then forgave me. In the elevator's metal, my face looked like someone who had stopped asking to be invited. We refined the notice language until it fit on one page. This is to place you on formal notice that no gift pledge or consent is granted or implied, Avery typed. Any encumbrance requires my wet signature and a contemporaneous voice recording. He shortened 2 adjectives. He printed certified mail labels while I drew a contact grid. Names, emails, street addresses. Tracking columns still blank. Heath called. Your voice rule is live across checking savings and brokerage, he said. Branch alert is active. Any device change triggers a call to the number we verified. I repeated the callback phrase for the recording. He read back the ticket number. I added dividers to my folder. Bank title lender notary counsel. Under bank, I taped the trusted device alert and the 2-step history showing approvals from a phone I do not own. Under lender, I taped the slideshow notes and the HDMI label from the banquet. Story versus ledger side by side. Before the notary, Avery asked if I wanted anything else on the record. Yes, I said. I will not confront them today. I will verify, document, and prevent harm. I am not seeking apology. I initialed nothing, only dated each page, even. By afternoon, Avery's notice to lender would hit an inbox with a read receipt, and a notary's journal would tell us who filled in the blanks before I ever held a pen. The lender's auto reply pinged first, then the read receipt, and Avery said, "Good now, let's see the notary's book." He reread our 1-page notice, trimmed a stray adjective, and hit send from the case account. The subject line carried the matter code. The body flagged disputed authority, my sworn revocations, and a request to place any second mortgage steps on hold pending verification. My affidavit rode as a clean PDF. We watched the cursor spin, then settle. Within a minute, the inbox stacked itself, auto-acknowledgement with a case number, then a read receipt from a senior processor whose name I did not repeat aloud. A second line appeared. Temporary hold pending ownership verification. I let air out slowly through my nose. Validation is not victory, but it is a door that shuts behind you. Avery routed copies to title Bank Compliance and Heath. He CC'd Gannon with one sentence. Please review application metadata for originating device and preparer. The red light on the recorder kept its steady eye. We were not arguing. We were building. He drafted the notary records request, next each clause, a rung full journal entries for any appearance under my name copies of ID presented, and scans of any pre-filled forms tied to powers of attorney or estate management. He added a line about presenter identity and the time window. Specificity gets answers, he said. A notary named Lacey answered the first call. Her voice was polite and careful. Avery handled the speaking. I listened. Yes, she kept a lawful journal. Yes, she could provide scans for counsel with an appointment time and acknowledgement. She asked for our matter code and emailed a calendar slot before we hung up. The first scans landed 28 minutes later. Twist or not paper is just paper until you read it. The journal listed my name on a day I remember for rain. The notes column read form, pre-filled by presenter prior to arrival. A narrow slash in the margin looked like a C beside an L. The timestamp touched the same hour as one of my home maintenance withdrawals, back when I still believed helping was simply helping. I aligned the times. Journal at 11:06. Withdrawal at 11:14. The slideshow's DIY weekend stamped 3 days later. The pattern did not argue, it pointed. You can measure respect in minutes when money moves first and signatures are decorations. Avery labeled the files before the ink in my head could drift. EX7A notice to lender, EX7B read receipt and hold, EX7C notary journal scan, EX7D ledger alignment. I renamed each by date case exhibit and slid a copy to an encrypted drive, then another to a thumb drive that lived in a small steel box at home. Backups are a kind of prayer that uses folders. We added one more request, the notary's copy of any identification shown by the presenter redacting numbers but leaving names. Lacey confirmed she would pull it at the appointment. Avery scheduled a courier for certified copies of our notice packet before close of business. The day clicked forward like a good lock. I stood, stretched my wrists, and drank water that had gone warm. The sleeve marked "unsigned" sat in my tote with the flap still sealed. My rule held institutions first. If family wanted explanations, they could subpoena my silence. Across Travis Street, the afternoon glare sheeted the glass. The conference room clock read 2:18. Gannon's reply dropped in with a small chime. The application file showed edits from 2 devices, both mobile, one labeled with a nickname that matched the initials I saw in the journal margin. He attached hash values and a short chain of custody note. Good, Avery said. Metadata talks cleaner than people. He added the email to the exhibits and drafted a simple cover memo in my voice for any future audience dates, actions taken, responses received. No adjectives, only verbs. I asked for one more line in the lender file, as plain as a rule taped to a fridge. No gift is granted or implied. No party is authorized to sign on my behalf. Any encumbrance requires my wet signature and a contemporaneous live voice recording. Avery placed it beneath my affidavit like a beam across 2 posts. We sat with the quiet a moment to let the shape of the day hold. I remembered the banquet chair by the kitchen door, the slideshow that thanked the idea of saving, not the fact of my transfer. I felt the same sting, smaller now because paper doesn't blink when it is true. The courier arrived. We initialed the manifest. Heath confirmed the bank's alerting rule would ping me if any secondary user's access changed. You'll get a distinct tone, he said. I wrote distinct tone on my pad because naming a thing tethers it. I gathered my folder heavier than it was this morning and lighter than my chest had been last night. You did not raise your voice, Avery said, so the record could speak. I nodded. Quiet is not surrender. Quiet is a tool you hold with 2 hands. Outside, a bus sighed at the corner, and a cyclist coasted past the garage ramp. I checked my watch set. 2 alarms, one for the lender, callback, one for the journal pickup, and wrote a final note to myself. Stay cordial. Stay documented. Stay unseen until the door you need is open. I powered down the recorder rose. By evening, my phone would chime with a different sound, the bank's access revoked ping. Just as I reached for the locket my husband left me, the alert lit my screen. Access removed for secondary user, and I thumbed the locket open. I sat back, letting the blue light wash the desk. The bank app badge blinked once more as if to ask whether I believed it. I tapped into security. The ghost device was gone. The card with the wrong last 4 had vanished. I took the screenshots slow and careful, each frame tagged with date and time, then dropped them into my case folder under EX8A. Vindication isn't loud. It is a small, steady click when a lock turns the right way. I forwarded the captures to Avery with a single line, confirmed access revoked. His reply landed within a minute. Lock confirmed. Ledger safe. Focus on self tonight. I flagged the thread green and closed the mail tab. I wanted to read his line again to pretend it was a benediction, but I had work. Passwords next. I reset them one by one. No rush, no shaking. I revoked old sign-ins, removed third-party links I didn't remember granting, and turned off recovery by email. Recovery codes printed to a single page went into the small vault drive. I wrote the label by hand offline. In the kitchen, I steeped chamomile and let the kettle set its own pace. Steam curled against the under-cabinet light. I rinsed 2 plates, even though I'd only used one, and set the sponge to dry on its edge. The house held its breath the way houses do at dusk. A clock ticked with the calm of an elder who has watched everything and says nothing. I carried the cup back and thumbed the locket hinge. The metal had a familiar coolness that always surprised me, like the first step into shade on a Houston afternoon. On the left, Richard's photo. On the right, the smudged footprint they pressed from Lyle's newborn heel. I traced both slow. There we were, the man who taught me to keep the book straight, and the child I once measured for pajama cuffs while the dryer thumped. Memory tried to flood. I let only a tide pool in, night shifts and mortgage envelopes, orange slices in T-ball coolers, the way Lyle slept in the back seat coming home from Galveston sand, stuck to his calves, the windows down because the AC had gone out again. We made it anyway. We always did. You can't erase who built the floor you stand on, I said into the quiet. Not a declaration, not a threat, just inventory out loud. I breathed with the clock 4 in 4, hold 6 out until the ache sorted itself from the anger, and both set down in their corners like tired dogs. I opened the printer tray and began a different kind of supper paper in order. Ledger charts, title documents, insurance beneficiaries, the advisor's voice lock confirmation, the lender hold each printed and hole punched. A binder waited on the table, empty and patient. I fed it pages until the rings felt weighty in my hands. On the spine, I slid a label I'd lettered in block print, "If they try again." Tabs bank, property, medical, will. A 5th tab I added at the last moment. Notes. Under it, I tucked a single sheet with questions for tomorrow. Serve additional notices. Request audit of every home maintenance transfer. Align slideshow dates with withdrawals. Draft a script for the first conversation with Lyle that owes nothing to apology. I mapped tomorrow as if it were a route across town. Avery at 9. Gannon on speaker at 9:40. Bank compliance at 10. Title at noon. The binder closed with a clean snap. I placed the locket on top the chain, draped like a comma. Rain began soft as fingertips on the porch rail. Cicadas sang as if they had never read a calendar. I switched off the desk lamp, let the room equalize, then turned it back on because I wasn't finished. I opened the locket once more and looked at the footprint smaller than my thumb and felt the exact distance between love and enabling. Love builds. Enabling erases the builder. I wrote one note on a single card and set it atop the binder. You wrote me out. I archived myself. I didn't know then whether anyone would ever read it. Some messages are written for the spine, not the eyes. I set alarms for 8:40 and 11:55, wrote them on the fridge calendar, and taped a spare. A key inside the tote pocket order calmed me. I slid the binder into my tote and set the tote by the door. The house exhaled. I let it. I washed the cup, dried it, and left the sink empty. No dishes waiting for morning, no loose ends to trip a tired mind. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past toward the cul-de-sac. Somewhere, a dog barked at nothing and everything. I checked my phone one last time. Avery had forwarded a confirmation from the bank's security team, secondary user removal propagated across all services. 3 words stood on their own line. No further action. I smiled at the period. In the hallway mirror, I looked like what I am, a woman old enough to know the difference between noise and proof. I tucked the locket into my blouse and felt it rest cool and certain against my skin. Quiet isn't surrender. Quiet is a tool you use when the other side hears only themselves. Tomorrow has its list. Tonight has enough. I locked the back door, clicked off the last light, and stood by the window long enough to name the sound of the rain. It was the same rhythm as a ship's wake against pilings at the Galveston Pier. I thought of the cruise I would not board and felt for the first time no pull at all. By morning, they would walk into their own boardroom and find my name waiting on every chair. My nameplate stood at the head of the table, and their smiles froze as they sat. I set that line beside the water pitcher in the title company's conference room, a private reminder that presence can be quiet and still unmistakable. Galleria traffic hummed beyond the glass. I laid my binder, the one labeled, "If They Try Again," on the table, and placed a revocation summary on each chair. Marta, the escrow officer, checked the file. "Good morning, Ms. Noreen. File ending 28. "That's right." I handed her the sleeve-stamped, unsigned, and the timeline exhibits. Context only. No signatures today. She clicked through the record. The old gift deed, Avery's revocations, the lender's hold. She verified without commentary. Read title counsel entered with a legal pad. "We can build a protective wrapper," he said. "No theatrics, only structure." We began with identity license utility bill, a signature specimen bound to nothing else. I signed that page the way you sign a boundary, distinct, legible, and once. Marta turned the monitor toward me. "We can move your interests and any proceeds into an escrow requiring your live authorization. No voice, no movement. If you approve, we'll execute and stamp." "I approve," I said. "Make the status visible in the file." She typed. A green dot appeared, escrow, sealed, timestamped to the second. Marta printed confirmations. Reed slid one to me, a lock clicking. Reed called the receiving bank. "Will verify verbally and again through the secure portal. Client has a voice confirmation lock." The officer read a case number. Reed underlined it twice. I set my 2-column sheet, their claims versus my ledger, between us. Here's their slideshow title, "How We Built Our Home." Here are the transfers labeled home maintenance that predate those DIY weekends. Marta initialed each page. Reed added exhibit letters. Facts have their own temperature. Reed opened a blank addendum template. "We can mirror your voice rule across entities and add a reverter if unauthorized access is attempted." Plain language, I said. He wrote addendum protective clauses. Clause 1, no disbursement assignment or encumbrance without the owner's recorded live voice. Clause 2, any POA or similar instrument not executed in counsel's presence. After today, escrow freezes pending verification. Clause 3, service instructions to lenders. Title insurer. HOA notice must be acknowledged by read receipt and certified mail. Clause 4, any staff who accept contrary instructions must escalate or the hold persists. He slid the draft to me. I read every line, then initialed the margins and signed once at the end, granting nothing except locks I required. Marta gathered the packets. "We'll serve notices now." "Both channels," I said. "Certified and email." While she was gone, I rested my hands. The blanket she'd left warmed my forearms. Conference rooms in Texas run cold. Outside, a bus hissed. Inside, paper-cooled hot events. Reed's phone chimed. "Read receipt from the lender," he said. "Hold acknowledged. Title has accepted the addendum." "Good," I said. "Index the receipt as an exhibit." "Already labeled." I looked at my reflection in the window skyline layered behind it. I did not think about baby footprints in a locket or sugar-white slides that wrote me out. I thought about rails, gates, authorizations. People change. Systems log. Marta returned with proofs. USPS slips lender portal captures a bank compliance email using the phrase, "We recognize the owner's voice lock." I slid each into the binder in the order they'd be needed if the day turned loud. Before I left the title office, Reed coordinated with my bank officer on speaker one more time. We repeated the instructions like pilots reading a checklist. Verify by phone, verify by portal. No third-party passwords accepted. No email links acted upon. I asked the officer to add a trusted contact note with Avery's direct line. She read it back to me and saved the profile while we listened to the keystrokes land. One errand remained. The local branch sat 5 minutes from my house. I stopped there to confirm that access had not crept back in. The manager pulled up the screen where secondary users live and die. The ghost device from earlier chapters was gone. The card nickname that matched Carol's initials no longer clipped to my account. I asked for a printed confirmation and a note on the profile. Contact of Record Avery's office. Back home, I scanned the sealed escrow confirmation and the addendum protective clauses, saving them to an encrypted drive. 2024 escrow sealed, but an addendum protective clauses then backing up to a second device that lives off cloud. Rain rinsed the heat from the driveway. Live oaks shook themselves dry. I emailed Gannon Begin Audio Harvest from shared devices and accounts. Look for coaching around pre-filling forms, or POA. 3 sentences, a list of timestamps, nothing more. I set my nameplate, a cardstock strip with Noreen, on the desk corner. There, I labeled the paper folder Escrow Today and filed it behind the binder. Some rooms require introductions. Others require labels. Today required neither. I had my locks. At dusk, my phone chimed the small patient ping of an attachment. The subject line read, "Recovered voice memo." I let it sit a full minute before I opened it. Presence can be quiet and still be unmistakable. He pressed play, and her own words mapped the plan as neatly as any contract. Gannon let the memo run. Carol's voice was brisk. "Slip it under her door. Tell her it's to simplify estate-wise. We'll keep the crews only family." Utensils clicked on a counter. Lyle murmured assent. The clip ended on a thin laugh. Hash and metadata attached, Gannon said. He sent a link x10a voice memo.m4a and an evidence log. Creation date device model, Wi-Fi SSIDs GPS off. He read the hash aloud. I copied it and underlined it. We time-stamped the memo against my ledger. It fell between 2 home maintenance transfers I hadn't authorized and referenced Monday pre-approval. The same Monday, the lender captured an application with my address. I added a line to the spreadsheet voice memo Carol intent. "Pull 2 quotes for your attorney," Gannon said. I listened again. "She signs or we proceed anyway," she said, "and only family on the cruise avoids drama." I typed the sentences verbatim and saved x10a transcript.pdf. No adjectives required. Anything else I asked. "Calendar," he said, sharing his screen. A grid opened. 1 square, a week before the envelope, POA mom sign Lacey. Another Monday, €10 AM. Refi, second Monday 10A. Properties showed a shared household account pushed to 2 devices. He exported screenshots EX10B, X10C, and noted scheduling pattern suggests coordination with outside parties. I forwarded everything to Avery with a subject I could live with, later, new evidence voice memo plea calendar. He replied within minutes, received, drafting, preservation and non-destruction notices for lender title notary, preparing an elder financial exploitation advisory holding until you authorize. Hold the advisory I wrote, serve preservation tonight. He agreed. The plan stayed institutional. No calls, no texts. Serve seal cell. I wrote the words again at the top of my pad. Before we hung up, Gannon asked, "Do you want cloud backups pulled? Phones keep drafts." "Yes," I said. "Anything labeled draft, refi, POA, or pre-approval. Preserve original paths." I asked him to read the metadata once more while I wrote each field beside a box file name hash-length device model, last modified time zone. We captured a screenshot of the property's window with the system clock visible and my email header in frame, simple way to anchor source and time. He added the evidence log number to the file name and mirrored the bundle to a read-only folder. 2 copies, 2 locations, he said. I wrote the log code on a yellow sticky and dated it. Then he read the hash again, and I echoed it back slowly. He set the harvest to run and promised a morning report. I closed the memo and sat with the feeling, not the people. My son's voice was small, but it still knew the old doors. I closed one gently. Rain ticked on the patio. The stove clock read 9:47. I stood stretched and put the night into its boxes. I backed up X10A through X10C to the encrypted drive and labeled a USB for the fire safe. My binder lay open, bank property medical will. I slid a page into evidence and wrote audio intent to override. Bullets, memo calendar screenshots, ledger alignment. Beneath that, in my husband's steady half-print, do not argue, document. I brewed tea. The locket on the desk showed his photo and Lyle's tiny footprint. I left it open. Memory is fuel measured. Avery's notices arrived plain precise. Dates and case numbers quoted, an order that no records be altered or destroyed. I checked names and addresses. He queued certified mail and email with red receipts. Sending at 10, he wrote, "You'll see the receipts." "Thank you," I replied, and flagged the thread green. I turned to a clean page and wrote the morning list, send preservation and non-destruction notice Avery. Confirm escrow status with MARTA. Capture closed screen. Schedule locksmith for buyer handoff date. Ask Gannon for cloud backup report and hashes. Prepare one-page summary for controlled disclosure to Lyle when counsel advises. I let the house be quiet for a minute. Stillness used to mean waiting. Tonight it meant choices already made. Back at the computer, I zipped the X10 files, added the transcript, and copied them to a second drive. I printed the transcript dated and signed it and filed it behind the audio tab. My hands did not shake. Outside, the rain eased to mist. A dog barked once and stopped. The screensaver drifted. I woke the monitor and looked once more at the calendar boxes that had tried to set my life. They were just squares now. Lamp off, then on again. One last pass. Passwords changed, recovery methods confirmed, backups complete. Check marks by each item. I closed the notebook and set it on the binder like a lid. Before bed, I sent one more email. Avery, please add lender contact to the notice. CC Title Counsel. Gannon begin audio harvest overnight. Replies chimed, done. Running. I stood in the doorway and looked at the small room that had become my control center. The storm had moved east. The air smelled washed. I closed the laptop, set the locket on the binder's spine, and spoke one sentence into the quiet I could live with in the morning. You wrote me out. I archived myself. By noon, escrow would close, and the deed would move quietly while their ship cut blue water. For tonight, the work was finished, and the record was clean. Marta slid the final page across the table, and the status beside our file turned to closed. I did not smile. I breathed once, steadied my pen, and read the header again. Settlement, escrow, disbursement, each word a rail keeping the train on track. The Galleria office hummed with printers and low voices. A blanket waited on the chair because the room always ran cold. On the monitor, the portal still showed pending. Read the title counsel verified my ID and the file number, then clicked through the checklist. All revocations on file, he said, tapping the packet Avery emailed. Protective addendum attached. He nodded to Marta. She confirmed chain of title, noted the recorded gift from years ago, and the fresh affidavits rescinding any authority that did not carry my voice. I initialed the margin tags one by one. The screen flipped. Pending became closed, lime green and timestamped down to the second. My hands stayed steady. Reed printed the settlement sheet and stamped funds held per addendum. The wire instructions sat in the file but would not move an inch until I said the passphrase. I watched him place the confirmation on a stack labeled EX11A and slid it into my folder. Next e-recording, he said. He assembled the deed packet, scanned the barcode, and pushed it into the county queue. We waited. A delivery truck hissed in the alley. Air conditioning clicked. Then the confirmation ID landed in his inbox. Accepted, he read. He handed me the recording receipt. Paper makes a sound you can trust if you slow down enough to hear it. We mirrored the protections everywhere. Reed read the addendum aloud. No transfer, no lien, no beneficiary change without my live voice on record. Any hint of coercion triggers a hold and notice to counsel. I repeated the rule back the way a pilot reads a checklist. He added Avery's direct line as my trusted contact. When a safeguard works, it is boring on purpose. The bank called the conference line to verify that nothing had moved during recording. I spoke the phrase. The banker thanked me and logged the hold as active. Simple, civil, finished. Reed slid a warm cup of water toward me and pointed to the blanket. I tucked it over my knees and kept reading. At 67, I do not rush documents that change the shape of a life. By noon, I was in the car, the binder, riding shotgun, the locket warm in my palm as the summer glare lifted off the lanes to Sugarland. I parked one house down from the address I had once paid to steady. Live oaks threw their shade across the street like shawls. A realtor waved from the curb. With her were Jonah and Tessa, the buyer's two first names no story needed. We walked through together. I pointed to the breaker panel label, the water shut off the window locks that sometimes stuck in August. I set the garage remote on the kitchen island beside the stack of appliance manuals I had kept in plastic sleeves. A card lay on top, "Welcome home." There is a clean way to leave, and I chose it. The locksmith arrived right on time, tool bag in one hand, invoice pad in the other. He swapped cylinders with tidy movements, vacuumed the brass shavings, and wrote, "Owner on delivery," where the signature line waited. I signed N. Foster and dated it. He placed the sealed bag of old keys in my palm. I set them down, then slid them back to him. "Please dispose," I said. He nodded. Before I left the porch, I phoned Marta. She brought the banker back into the call. "Ready for release?" she asked. I looked once more at the couple on the step. Their fingers laced their eyes on the empty rooms that would soon hold their noise. "Ready?" I said, then spoke the passphrase. The funds moved from title to my protected trust, and the email hit my inbox seconds later with the subject line we had scripted days ago. Back home, I scanned the recording receipt, the key transfer affidavit, the locksmith invoice. Each file name began with the date. Each copy went to the encrypted drive and the backup vault. I placed the old spare key in a small ceramic dish, listened to the soft clink, then carried the dish to the shred bin and tipped it in. A boundary is sometimes as small as a discarded key. I wrote one line in my notebook: "No confrontation. Evidence speaks. Let the door close." The house settled around me with the sounds I know AC hum a distant mower, the tick of the stove clock. I answered Avery's brief email recording received. Well done, with a thank you and nothing more. By late afternoon, the sky went that bleached Texas white that means heat without drama. I made tea, sat by the window, and let my hands rest. Ownership is not swagger. It is a line drawn, read aloud, and then followed. I had done that. The rest would arrive on its own tide. On the dining table, I arranged the binder spine-out deed escrow addendum so that even a hurried glance would understand the sequence. I printed a second copy of the recording receipt from my safe deposit box. A sticky note on the cover read it in block letters: "Verify, first sign, never without voice." I set the safe's dial to its habit. By dawn, their ship would dock, and they would drive straight to a driveway that was no longer theirs. I didn't plan speeches. I planned silence in a folder. The deed did not announce itself. It waited in ink. If there was shock to be had, it would belong to the people who had asked the world to pretend I was not family. 2 moving vans, a young couple on the porch, and my folder in Lyle's shaking hands. The Sugarland sun bounced off the driveway so hard it narrowed the eyes. Movers threaded dollies between box stacks. The porch light on in daylight from a test went off, then on again. I stood at the public sidewalk with my binder against my chest and kept my breathing level. A rideshare stopped. Lyle stepped out. First suitcase tilted cruise tag flapping. Carol slid behind him, tapping her phone without looking up. When they saw the vans, both paused midair as if a note had been held too long and finally cracked. I lifted one hand in a small, polite wave. The wave you give a neighbor, when you mean no trouble and intend none. I did not step onto the driveway. "Not your house," I said, neutral tone, even pace. "Not anymore." The realtor turned from the buyers and nodded toward me. "Owner of record," she told them, and then to my son and his wife. "We're finishing a walkthrough." Lyle's gaze bounced from the vans to the porch and back to me. Carol unlocked her phone and frowned at the banking app, then at the keypad on the door. No response from either. Ground rules, I said, still on the sidewalk. No shouting. We all stay on our sides. This is quick. The buyers kept to their porch. The movers kept rolling. I opened the binder and took out a thin packet held with a single clip. Paper is lighter than anger and lands better. Here I said to Lyle and held the packet where he could take it without crossing the line. First page, the county recording receipt with yesterday's timestamp. Next, escrow summary stamped closed. Then the bank notice showing access removed for secondary user, the notary journal scan, noting pre-filled by presenter. A 2-line pull from the voice memo, the calendar capture that read, POA mom sign Lacey. And finally a copy of the cease and desist, already served to lender and title. Facts travel well. Kirill tried for lift. You can't do this, family handles family. I answered once. Institutions handled it. I documented it. She opened her mouth again and then glanced at the phone a second time, where, unable to sign in, glowed like a small, efficient sunrise. Lyle turned the page that held his own words in print, small yeses recorded in a kitchen where he thought no one was keeping minutes. His suitcase handle sagged. I kept my voice clear and small enough for only us. 3 lines, I said. No money moves without my voice. No signatures without independent counsel present. No access to my person property or accounts. I touched the packet. If you contest this, goes to the record where strangers read it forever. I prefer silence. Choose well. The buyer's realtor offered a careful smile in our direction and returned to the porch. The locksmith handed them the last key set and showed them the way the new cylinders liked a slow turn. The porch light clicked off and stayed off. A reset neat and ordinary. Mom, please, Lyle said. Voice gone hoarse. He looked 16 for a blink and then 36 again, shoulders up around his ears. We can talk. I shook my head once. You miss what I gave, not who I am. I'm finished being useful while invisible. I slid a folded therapist's card, someone neutral and steady, into his palm. If you choose help, I'll meet you there, not here. I checked my watch and typed a short text to Avery encounter complete. No trespass. Packet delivered. A minute later, received. Then Gannon lender file shows hold authority disputed closed. I put the phone away. The urge to fill the air passed through and kept going. We stood like that for a few beats, 2 people who share a history and a silence, and another person who has confused control with care. The buyers signed something on their porch. A mover laughed at something no one else heard. A breeze lifted the corner of the welcome mat. I wish you well, I said, because blessings cost nothing, and sometimes they are the only clean gift left. Take care of each other. I nodded to the buyers. Welcome home. Then I turned because turning is also a sentence. In the car, I rested the locket atop the binder and let the engine idle until the air cooled. Quiet isn't weak. Quiet is finished. I drove past the park where my husband used to read the Sunday paper and wave at the kids on bikes. The oak over the bench made a broad shade, the kind that forgives noon. I did not stop. At home, I set the binder on the kitchen shelf, labeled Life Not Case. A pot warmed for chamomile. The window opened to a thin rain that smelled like hot pavement learning manners. I set my phone face down and left it there. I wrote one final line in my notebook, careful block letters that did not shake. They gambled with my gift. I kept my life. I rinsed the mug, turned off the light, and let the evening be ordinary. No speeches for the room, no parade for the heart, just the sound of water in the pipes and the long relief of a door that closes without a slam. Some endings sign themselves. Before sleep, I filed duplicate receipts in the fire safe and one more in an envelope for my safe deposit box. I set a 2-month reminder to audit every account and another to walk the bayou on Sundays. I touched the locket once, not for luck, for history. Quiet felt familiar from widowhood, not empty, just mine. I let that truth sit beside me and did not move it. I learned that quiet is not surrender. It's a boundary with a spine. When family blurs love with control, choose dignity. Document. Verify use institutions and protect what you've built. Compassion doesn't require access. Accountability isn't cruelty. It's care for the future. If you're facing a similar storm, start small change. A rule, keep a log call, a trusted professional, and breathe. Have you ever had to choose peace over approval? What boundary will you draw today? If this story touched you, comment 1 or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't say why, I'm listening. And if you'd like more true human stories, please subscribe to the channel.